matters in Richmond as well. Doctor?
Thank you. I do think it's appropriate that the authority be involved in this steps along the way. And I think that, with the visitor center, the process of expediting this by email and soliciting comment has worked very well. It did not slow things down, waiting people to give input. It's possible you'd want to designate a working group from the board to work with the museum in a more formal sense, so that when we came together in June, you would have language that had been vetted by that working group of expertise. And so that, your very first point, Mr. Chairman, of not just sort of putting all this on the burden, I think it's appropriate for us to share the responsibility for what is said, and I think it needs to be done through that process. The other thing that I would say is that I don't know if it's possible to have another sign that would be here for August telling people about the larger process that's in which we are engaged. But I think it would not be a permanent sign, but to let people know who see the memorial arch that the governor has mandated this process and it's underway, so that people would know what it is that they're seeing. So that's just an additional idea that might help people understand where we are in our own time in history. That, to honor the law under which we operate, we can't move fast enough to remove it, but people need to know the intent behind our efforts. So if there were, and that wording could also be vetted through the same process for the Park Service and the museum and staff, members of the board.
Those are excellent comments, and I would hope that the governor's letter would receive maximum currency distribution, if you will. Dr. Ellis and then Mr. Reynolds.
I would certainly agree with what Ed has said about a subcommittee and in some way of engaging with the staff prior to the June meeting. I also just wanted to add to the whole idea of signage. And we live in a very, very technologically swift world. And even though signage will cover some things, it won't cover all things. So we need to have a conversation about brochures that might be able to provide a larger and more expanded view of the history that is a part of this whole process. And then also, social media is out there as well. Some sense of a media strategy that gives us some sense of how we want to approach the variety of ways that questions will come to us in general should also be a part of that discussion that we have that's specific now just to the signage, but it needs to cover communications writ large, in my opinion.
If I could just interrupt briefly, so you can imagine a QR code posted there, that if you'd like to know what's going on right now, point your cell phone at this and you can get an updated version. So it need not be expensive in order for people to have an understanding of what's going on.
Thank you, Dr. Ellis. Thank you, Dr. Reyes. Mr. Reynolds.
3 points, I think. One is I agree with both of the doctors here that their prescriptions are right on. Number 2, to maybe give you some comfort in this difficulty of addressing these kinds of issues. This is not a new thing. It's not even new for the Fort Monroe Authority. It's only been a few weeks since Robin and his staff actually sent out to some of us the exhibit signage that's going to go in the visitor center in the language, and I think if they're honest, they will say we received an incredible amount of feedback because it was a very thoughtful process, and they were extremely, extremely good in thinking through what the comment was. So, number 1, they have a little practice. Number 2, the National Park Service has a long history of these kinds of things. I mean, in the late 80s, I believe it was, we changed the name of Little Bighorn. At the time, we changed the name of Custer Battlefield National Monument to glorify Custer to Little Bighorn, because Custer is the one that, lost and started the massacre. Number 2, just as a more recent example, I think the name is right, around Sand Hills Massacre National Historic Site, is named officially Sand Hills Massacre, because what happened was that the Army, with no announcement whatsoever, massacred a sleeping village of Indians. And then more recently on like both Manzanar and Flight 93, at Flight 93 we did what Ed just suggested. We formed a small committee of people inside and outside of the government and reviewed all the language about how to address terrorism, how to address Muslim, Islamic extremists, all of those kinds of things. And so, yes, this is difficult, and yes, it's if people are asked, they will put every bit of their effort. They will find folks at universities if they need to or elsewhere to help look at the language. It's very, very important that it be done and be done well, and this staff is up to it. And finally, I'd just like to make a comment is that as we go forward here, let's remember this was not a war between the states. This was a war between the nation. A bunch of states left the nation, and we fought with what was proposed to be another nation. It was not a war between the states.
Thank you very much, Mr. Reynolds. Thank you for all those constructive comments. And I agree with you that Robin does a terrific job as a resident historian and curator. And thank you for all that you provided yesterday. Dr. Yes.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, may I make a comment? And my comment is very general. And I'm thinking about, since we're talking about strategy and working groups and so on, I think one question in my mind is what happens if we're successful in removing the arch? What happens then? What does that space mean? How do we interpret that space in the absence of the arch? Do we acknowledge that it was there? What is that narrative? So I don't know what the answer is, but I'm already kind of jumping ahead to what then? So I just want to keep that in our thoughts as part of a larger strategy. I think that anything after today is going to be very political. And I think that we need to acknowledge that and just be ready. I think part of that larger comment about strategy and anticipation and so on. So that's my comments. Thank you.
That's very helpful comments. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Olson. Further commentary? Yes, Mr. Superintendent.
I would just add that policy going forward needs to have some form of evolution. The current policies are just structured. They keep us on one road. I just think that we need to account for culture and society ever-changing ways. And I think it's just too restrictive right now. And I think that's why the governor is looking at this in a different way. So I think if there's some modification to the policies or the programmatic agreement, that it allows for society's ever-changing ways. And because that is an emotional place over there. I use that language a lot. So I just hope that is taken under consideration as we're modifying things.
Very good. So we're in the receipt of the letter officially. Mr. Jarvis, would you like to restate your motion since we've had substantial comment on it? Would you like to restate it and we'll get it seconded again?
I move that the Board of Trustees supports removal of the Jefferson Memorial Park arch and acknowledges receipt of the governor's letter and supports its intent.
And is that seconded? Is that motion seconded?
Second.
Seconded by Dr. Ellis. And after this, incidentally, I'm going to call for the appointment of a subcommittee. Further discussion. We've had significant discussion. All those in favor of Mr. Jarvis's motion will say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Being none opposed, the motion passes. And now, I think, consistent with the motion to the suggestion that we set up a subcommittee, we might act. But Mr. Reynolds?
We've done the motion and it's passed. I would just like to note that there is an error in the letter, and that is that the arch itself is a contributing structure, contributing element, is that correct?
Well, that's up for debate. In the documents it is listed, but it's outside of the period of the NHL listing.
Okay, so
We are arguing that it is not a contributor, should not be a contributing factor, but he's currently listed as such.
okay, so I'll just not say anything. Thank you.
Yeah, so thank you, Mr. Sachs. So in essence, the authority is siding with the governor's staff's perspective and the governor's perspective on this, that it is not contributing from their interpretation. You got that, Jessica? So now we might want to hear from Mr. Oda. Did you want to say anything?
My only suggestion would be that we typically try to use working groups as opposed to executive directors working groups as opposed to a formal subcommittee of the board. If we do a working group, then I have a lot of latitude in terms of my communications and so forth. Nothing is trying to be done behind closed doors or whatever, but it allows phone conversations and so forth and emails and things forward, which will all be disclosed. There's nothing there, but it just eases the ability to operate as opposed to a formal subcommittee.
Excellent suggestion. Thank you. So I'm going to ask for volunteers for this working group. So Dr. Ellis, Dr. Ayers, Mr. Reynolds, Dr. Elderson Lee, Mr. Sachs. We've got a substantial working group. Well, that's your working group. And
Mr. Chairman, just so everybody understands, it still means we still can't get together as 3 or 4 people or whatever. I mean, it's still only 2 people at a time, but that's the committee, that's the working group that I will be operating within and keep the board and the public apprised of our process.
it's a good representation of the authority, frankly. Very good. Well, I think we're ready to move off. Thank you, Mr. Mercer. You stimulated, I think it's fair to say, you stimulated some discussion. Appreciate your input. Are we ready to get to the Executive Director's report, Mr. Oda?
Mr. Chairman, while the report was provided as a read-ahead, if anybody has any questions, I'll be certainly glad to take